Hey folks, I have a big milestone to announce today. My Peaceful Space adventure game is available for testing right now on Android and iOS. The store links are in the description below, and this is a free game. So if you or someone you know is interested in simple, peaceful, and uplifting gameplay, then please consider testing Paperspace and leaving some feedback. It'll help me to make the game into a better adventure for everyone. In my last devlog, I explained how I want to create an experience that is simple, peaceful, and uplifting, these being the three design pillars of the game. Since then, my technical focus has been on iteration, that is, building incrementally on top of the existing game. But my personal focus has been on keeping mindful and motivated during some changes in my life outside of developing games. In this video, I'll share what I've learned in both areas and show you some new game features. But let's begin with my approach to iteration, because I think there are some lessons here that can be applied to many life projects, not just game development. I've been building Paperspace on weekends and evenings for about 16 months. If you asked me in the beginning how long I thought it would take, I would have guessed about 4 to 6 months. That sounds like a pretty bad estimate, but when I look at the scope I set for myself in the beginning and compare that to what I had built at the 6-month mark, it was pretty close. I'd built the game I wanted to build at the beginning, more or less. But the user experience was awkward. It wasn't fun, and I wouldn't have been proud to release it. I said in my first devlog that coming up with ideas is easy to an extent, and that following through on them is the hard part. To expand on that, I think there's only so much scope an early idea can define. In my case, it wasn't until I started implementing an idea of a simple, peaceful, and uplifting space adventure that I could access the full spectrum of ways to implement this idea. In doing this, I discovered a better game. I imagine this as a tree of possibilities, where doing work on one branch leads to an explosion of new shoots, and maybe the destruction of a few other branches. The tree might look different to what I expected, but it's grounded in that initial vision. At some level, I think this is the only way Paperspace in its present form could have been built. Seeds emerge into trees, and ideas emerge into things. To put it into another analogy, I started a construction project with an immovable foundation. But rather than defining the entire blueprint up front, I instead discovered the floor plan as I went, and I shifted the fixtures around repeatedly until they were good enough for now. This is iteration in a nutshell. It's about building, testing, and revising continuously. It's not really as clean as I've described, and you can definitely get caught in an infinite iteration hell if you're not careful. But to mitigate this, I keep a month-by-month plan to keep things on track. So let's quickly look at a few examples of recent iteration in Paperspace. First, I've updated the mineral collection sound effects. Someone commented on my last video offering to develop some more professional sounds. It was the first time I've paid anyone to help me out, and this turned into an awesome collaboration. Second, I made the transitions in and out of the cave a bit smoother. Previously, you were dropped into the cave without a chance to prepare, and you exited the cave abruptly just to a static screen that showed your score. I'll need to iterate on this again, but it's moving in the right direction. Third, there's more texture to the world, like on the cave walls and in the background. This only took about an hour to implement, but I think it ties a few design elements together nicely. My fourth example is the ship designs. As a recap, once you collect a few minerals from the near infinite galaxies of Paperspace, you'll be able to build a new spaceship. These ships have their own stats, and you'll need to find the right balance of ship speed and maneuverability for each cave. These here are the old designs. Now, I'm obviously not the greatest 2D artist, so recently I've been using a generative AI model called Midjourney to generate some new ship designs. Then I use a program called Critter to clean them up, and then finally Inkscape to add some final touches. I'm not sure if they're too detailed for the rest of the aesthetic, but part of the purpose of releasing Paperspace for testing is to get an independent point of view on things like this. So please check out the game and let me know your thoughts. Those are the 4 more noticeable iterations on existing features. It's fun to improve what's already in the game, but it's definitely more fun to build new stuff, and sometimes iteration leads to totally new ideas. On that note, you might remember Blip, the supportive companion in Paperspace. Since the last devlog, I've developed about 200 new lines of dialogue for Blip. He's still as cheery and encouraging as ever, but he's now got a lot more to say. There were some new dialogue scenarios that required a bit of tinkering in Blip's code when I was doing this. At the same time, I've been thinking about ways to implement non-player characters or NPCs into my future games. Then I was wondering if it'd be fun to discover aliens throughout the galaxies of Paperspace and to be able to interact with them through dialogue options. So whilst I was operating on Blip, I boosted the power of the Wernicke's area of his brain, which in humans is the part that deals with language. In Blip, it's just a pile of code. Blip himself isn't using this at the moment, but I've got a separate NPC prototype that's working on a technical level, which is exciting. But this is the iteration hell that I mentioned earlier. I really need to focus on the game's release, and I think doing more work on the NPCs will distract me from that goal. My excitement is driving me to develop this new shiny thing, but my plan is telling me I don't have the time. It's not lost work though. Even if the NPCs don't make it into Paperspace before launch, I can reuse what I've built in my next game project. Whilst I'm happy with the progress recently, I've been distracted by some life events and one really annoying technical issue. But sometimes things fall apart and you can't escape it. When I hit a slower period like this, I need to remind myself that developing a game isn't just about writing lines of code and developing assets. It's about passion, persistence, and pushing through mental hurdles. And to be honest, it's challenging, as everyone knows, focus doesn't just happen. The biggest trap I fall into is waiting around to feel motivated. But if you think about it, how often are we motivated at exactly the right time to achieve our goals? Basically, never. So instead, I try to apply some very low-level focus on tiny things first, like making a coffee and sitting at my desk, or just opening my plan and reading the next task. Then I can jump from one tiny thing to another until that motivation kicks in, which for me happens when I'm in the thick of solving a problem. Then, lastly, I can really harness that energy to get some work done. And it feels good to create something that I hope at least a few people genuinely enjoy for a little while. Every bit of progress, no matter how small, makes me think I can actually finish this game. I do still have quite a bit to finish before launch, and with that said, I'm going to get back to it. Please let me know in the comments if you're enjoying these devlogs, and don't forget the test version of Paperspace is available right now across Australia. So please check it out by following the links in the description below. If you know anyone who might be interested in Paperspace, then please send them a link to this video. I'm nervous but also really excited about getting some feedback. There are branches on that tree of possibility I mentioned earlier that I just can't see from where I'm standing. So the perspective of others is super valuable and will help me to make Paperspace a better adventure for everyone. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching until the end of the video, and I hope you have an awesome day.